Good evening, everyone. I know we still have a few that are coming in, getting ready to take their seats. I would just want to encourage everyone, if you came in and you bypassed the desk area, we really would like for you to sign in. That sign-in sheet is going to allow us to be able to provide you information for if you decide you need to have some questions for us or follow-up. By us having that information filled out, it'll make it a lot easier for us to communicate with you beyond this meeting on tonight. So if you came in and you happen to bypass that, please do that before you leave. I do want to let you know I have a young lady who's on our communications team who's walking around. You may see her taking photos here and there. Part of that is for us to, again, to demonstrate that not only sometimes do we have these types of events where we're providing information, but sometimes people don't remember it. So we need to try to capture and document some of these things that we do so that the community can have faith and then also have some documentation that some of these things actually happen. So if you see Miss Chelsea walking around, please just know that that's what that is. So as we get ready to get started here, I want to let you know who I am. My name is Leonardo Brown. I am your Richland County Administrator. I've actually been here in Richland County for about 3 years now. I'm not a native of South Carolina, so thank you all for inviting me to your state. And my time here during COVID-19 has been very interesting. The majority of my time here has been under COVID-19. So certainly appreciate the opportunity to share with you some of the effects, but then also some of the resources that have come out of COVID-19. And that's what this opportunity here on this evening is about. I want to just give you some general information as a part of this welcome. So first of all, welcome to each and every one of you. I want to talk to you just briefly about Richland County and what Richland County has done in this past year related to COVID-19. Specifically, the county was the recipient of about $80 million from the federal U.S. Treasury. With that $80 million, I think you'll be pleased to know that well over 50% of those funds have gone specifically to overall community-related projects, whether those are projects specifically that we're going to talk about tonight with a specific focus of grant dollars. But overall, the county has put a lot of funding towards things that we heard back from members of the community. You may recall earlier that there was a community survey that went out when the county first received these funds. And we asked members of the community to tell us what are the needs that you believe you have identified that will be the best utilization of these funds. Some of those things are highlighted in the grant documentation that you have that shows that this is a direct response from you to us. So we took that information that you provided, where you told us things such as housing needs, whether that was housing for the unhoused, housing for a homeless, or if it were things for helping seniors with repairs to their homes, whether that was other forms of needs such as recreational services, right? Or even we received a lot of feedback on just dealing with neglect and abused children. There are several different things that we heard back from you. And we took what we heard from you and we basically took those top 10 things that we heard, and then we've set out what you have in your packet today, which shows you a number of breakdown of categories that you can, through your organizations, apply for grant funding for. So if you look at that, you will see that in your documentation, and we'll talk about those specifically just a little bit later on. But I just wanted to start this evening off by letting you know that this is an informational designed to provide you with information that we think that you would need to help fill out the grant application that has been put before the community. This grant application process is designed to affect those broad categories that you have listed. So hopefully tonight's information will be helpful to you. If for whatever reason you decide you want to come back for a second helping, we do have another session on tomorrow, same place at 10 o'clock a.m. So again, welcome to all of you. Thank you for coming out on this evening. And I'm going to turn the program over just as it's listed on your agenda. And we're going to have our next speaker come up. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Lori Thomas. She's our Assistant County Administrator. and she works with our large part of our financial arm here at Richland County. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. And thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. We've got a great turnout. I'm very happy about that. We actually were awarded these funds by the U.S. Treasury last March. We actually received our first tranche in May of 2021. But there was lots of contemplation from U.S. Treasury and from the government on how these funds would be used. We've seen a couple of reiterations of that, with the final guidance for that actually not being introduced to the governments until this March to take effect in April. So right now, everything that we will be doing related to this project, our council has taken the approach, and I think it's a very fruitful approach and a very prudent approach to actually follow the guidance of Treasury. There are several reasons for that. Number one is that this is a grant to the county, just like any grant that would be to any of you who through your organizations may apply. We have to follow the rules that are in place to make sure that if anything were to be audited, which it will be, we're not in a predicament where we may have to put the county's funds in jeopardy and have to repay those funds. So everything that we do and every answer that we give you, we will make sure that it is it's compliant with Treasury guidance. We have a really big team, or not a really big team, that's working on this, but I will say they have done a lot of heavy lifting, getting the application updated to the way that it would, so that it would be Treasury compliant, and making last-minute changes to make sure that everything was in there, into the platform of Zoom Grants, which is where we're going to be using to actually accept these applications. And at this time, I'd like to introduce that team to you. First is our Director of Budget and Grants, that's Abhi Deshpande. Next is our Manager of Budget, Denise Teasdale. And next is Mattia Pugh, who is our Budget and Grants Manager. So these people will be working with you and helping you with your technical questions. Additionally, to help them out, as you probably already know, we've hired a third party that will actually be vetting our applications for compliance and making certain that we have all the necessary documentation. Grant Thornton is going to be providing those services for us, and with us tonight we have Sarah Harris. So with that, you've heard all you need to hear from me. I'm going to turn it over to those people that can give you the best information, and I'll start with Abhi Deshpande.
So, good evening, everyone. My name is Abhi Deshpande. I'm Director of Budget and Grants Management with the Richland County. On the behalf of Budget Office, I welcome all of you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give a brief overview of all the different kind of funds, or we call it them as in the buckets of funds that are being allocated by the county council. As our county administrator, Mr. Brown, mentioned, that these different areas of funding were decided based on the community survey that was done last year. And with that, the total amount of ARPA funding is around 16 million for the projects. Those are community. Those are the available for the community-based organizations. So the now the first bucket is what we call is the funding for the small businesses. This is the only category or the bucket of funds is where you don't require 501c certificate. If you're a legit business organization conducting a business which could be affected negatively by the coronavirus pandemic, so then you may choose to apply for that category of funds. Now the rest of the funds are available only for the non-profit organizations. So these are the funds categories that in order to be qualified, and we'll talk about the eligibility a little bit more in few minutes, but the main criteria is that you need to be in a qualified 501c eligible organization, and so this has to be a non-profit organization. So the funding is not available for individual citizens to apply. You may receive the funding through via non-profit organization who are eligible to receive this fund. So that is the main kind of point that I really would like to clarify here, is that an individual citizen is not eligible to apply or receive the funds by themselves. They definitely may receive the funds through or via a community-based organization. The next funding is funding for nonprofit. It's a very broad category. The next funding is, let me take a little bit back. The small business funding is $1 million. Funding for nonprofit, that is a $1 million. Then funding for workforce training, that's a $1 million. Again, these are the areas where maybe this organization may be working in. So a workforce training, maybe an organization such as an educational institute or maybe a community-based college, they may be working in the workforce training area, so they will be eligible for those kind of that bucket. The next category is funding for education assistance. Again, $1 million. That's again, one of the organization may be helping with the students in the community, or maybe in a school, could be private, a non-profit educational institution would like to offer some kind of scholarships to the students, such as like that. So that could be an educational assistance. The next funding could be is for home repair for seniors, and that's again $1 million. I would like to, because based on the number of inquiries that we received, this category is not to again receive the funding for individual citizens to repair their private homes. Definitely they may receive these funds, but they have to go through an organization that receives those funds. So for example, if I'm a senior citizen by myself, I won't be able to receive the funds by myself. I have to go through an organization who is working in that area. The next bucket is address to food insecurity. That's $1 million. Then the next funding is for funding for broadband services in underserved areas. That's $2 million. Let me correct myself. The address for food insecurity is $2 million. Then the funding for affordable housing, that is $4 million. Then funding for services for unhoused persons, that's $2 million. And the funding for youth and recreational services, that's $1 million. And that's total together is $16 million at this point the county has allocated to these different areas. That's pretty much on my side, and now I will hand it over to Denise Teasdale. We can take some questions right now. That's fine. Please go ahead.
I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. On the small business side, did you say that's only for businesses that were affected during the pandemic?
I think one of the criteria is you need to have at least show the negative impact on your business for last 2 years. So which last 2 years, and which definitely covers the pandemic years. Yeah.
The part that says funding for nonprofits, $1 million.
That's right.
If you're a nonprofit and you want to apply for under these other areas that say $4 million or $2 million, I don't understand.
So okay, sorry, sure. So the question was, if you are a nonprofit, which is the $1 million category, and as well as that nonprofit organization can apply, if they would like to apply for some other areas working in that particular area for the funding. So definitely an organization can apply for more than one category, which is I think you're allowed to apply for 3 categories. So let's say like you may apply for the nonprofit general category, and then if you're working in, let's say like for educational assistance area, you can apply in that area, and also you can apply in the affordable housing if you're working in that area.
What falls under the general?
It's pretty much, any nonprofit administration, general categories which may not be covered under this area. Huh? Yeah, sure. Or maybe Ms. Thomas will clarify
hang on.
this.
With the nonprofit category, what I would suggest is that you can apply in any, every nonprofit can apply there, but it's more geared for nonprofits who experienced a downturn or hardship during COVID-19. So if your contributions were down, you did not perform as well as you did in the year prior because of the pandemic, and you've had a difficult time recovering from that, that would be where that pot of funds may be used. Okay?
Can I ask about the education part? How does the education part work?
To get into the specifics of each one would be very difficult. Typically, you would have an organization that may gear toward programs for education, and that would incent education. That would be one example. But there could be many. If you go in and read the Treasury guidance, it will be very clear as to what would or would not qualify. Okay? No problem.
Yes, please.
Going off what you said in terms of the nonprofit category demonstrating that you've been affected by COVID, does that mean the rest of the categories you don't have to be, or are those like more building back or, almost like programming to build us up?
Let me sort of explain the question that she just asked. Her question, and stop me if I didn't get this right, is with the nonprofit category, is it specific to nonprofits and that all the rest of the categories are more geared toward projects? Is that fair? Is that a fair statement?
Well, you said that you said that the nonprofits had to show that they had some sort of a downfall because of COVID. The rest of the categories have to show that.
Not necessarily. You have to show that you are impacted, your project or your application affects those individuals who were negatively impacted by COVID. Keep in mind that everything is relative to COVID-19 and COVID-19 mitigation and prevention. Okay? Yes, ma'am?
And somebody mentioned, I think you mentioned administration was part of that funding. Is that an allowable category? Or does it have to be general, can it be general operations, administration, like, or salaries covered, I guess is what I'm asking.
I think we probably would have to know more about the particular project. So I will make sure what was your name, ma'am? Rebecca Lorick. I will make sure that somebody gets back with you. Yes, ma'am?
Hi, Renee Dixon. Question 6 on application states if you want a new program. Now, since I haven't been affected by COVID, would that disqualify me from the nonprofit from applying?
It depends on really what you're actually applying for. If you're developing a project that helps to address and mitigate and prevent COVID-19 or works with those who were disparately affected by COVID-19, you can certainly apply. And then that would be the qualification would be left up to the qualifying group. Okay. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. I know that's probably number 4, but since we're talking about your applications, I know they were open September the 1st, but when I went online, I had a little difficulty accessing the application. Did anybody else experience that, or is there a certain thing you have to do?
We have heard that it gets really busy at times out there, and there's a lot of web traffic going on. So if you would just be patient with us, you should be able to, okay? Mhm. Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if this is the appropriate time to ask, but I have not seen a list of allowable expenses, similar to what Rebecca was asking, like salary support, capital investment, administrative support, purchasing of laptops. Like, what is allowable as an expense? That's generally something that comes with a grant, allowable expenses. And is that in the treasury guidelines?
It is.
It is? So it will, and do you know if salary support?
It really depends on the project. It really depends on what you're actually applying for. You know, obviously, if it takes people to do your project, some qualification of your salaries might be qualifiable, but you're just as with any grant, you're going to have to show what those salaries were, what they were used for, and give explicit details on those things.
Are there any expenses that are not allowable that you know of right now?
I can't speak right off the top of my head. I could not. I'm sorry. Anyone else?
Is there a timeline for the project?
Good question. Yes. All funds must be committed by December 31st, 2024, and expended by December 31st, 2026. However, because the county doesn't want to lose those funds, we will push that timeline up further. So if we award funds and we find that the funds are not being expended and it's a high risk that we would lose those funds, they may not be the allocation may not hold. Okay?
Yes.
December 31st, 2026 in total, but with these, it's going to have to, with these community grants, it will be that they would all have to be spent by December 31st, 2024. And that, as far as commitment, we would be looking at probably next year in 23, because if they are not expended, the county would want an opportunity to reallocate those funds. Other questions?
Yes.
If you had, people that were on salary and you removed them from salary because of 2020, pandemic, from 2020 up until the present, would that be allowable as expense for small business or either nonprofit?
I think the question is again the same about the salary is it allowable expense or not? Again, we cannot provide the general answer to that question, sir. It really depend on the project and how that project, if that project does qualify to receive ARPA funds or not. So it's again, I would say, project specific, and the evaluation will be done on the individual basis based on that project. Does that help you?
So you're saying that we have to submit and then
That's right. So all of the application is designed in a way where you will have to provide more information about your projects and kind of hardships and the downturn that you experienced due to COVID. And definitely based on that evaluation, the will consider the funding will be evaluated, and then once you get the funding, definitely our office will can help you on individual basis based on what is the allowable and not allowable in that particular project.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there any guidance on average size of grant award?
The question is there any guidance on average size of award? And no, there's not.
Question.
Yes.
If your 501c3, the people that's involved, they're all volunteers now because we are the building, are we
if you are a 501c organization, you're definitely, you're eligible to apply for the funds. Now, after getting the funds is really about, again, same thing, based on your project, what are the expenses that we can allow in order to reimburse through that grant. That kind of evaluation will be done after your grant is awarded.
Yes, ma'am.
Who's making the, assessments? Thank you for the, rubric. Is it gonna be council members or is it gonna be?
No, ma'am.
department?
No, ma'am. We have contracted with Grant Thornton, Public Sector LLC. They will be reviewing all applications for compliance, and they will also be scoring on the rubric.
Yes.
Is that September 30th deadline set in stone?
Yes. So the question is what?
Is that September 30th?
Yes, September 30th is the deadline to submit an application. Yes.
As I understand it, when we're developing our applications, we just need to show that people that we intend to serve fall into one of the affected groups, and that we don't need to spend a whole lot of time trying to identify or account for how we would assess each individual's experience with COVID. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Small businesses, how would I apply for this loan perspective? I have supplies since COVID that's sitting up that went up so materials. The product design, we had orders for these COVID. I have a lot of supplies, over $8,000 worth of supplies sitting. How can I recoup any of that?
Yeah, I think the question, if I'm understanding you, is that you're a private business, and then how are you eligible to receive the funds? I think the main criteria is here is to, if you are negatively impacted due to COVID, and the bottom line, your financial statement shows that you have suffered the loss as a result of the pandemic in your, maybe through your operations or maybe lack of business. So definitely, your financial documents will support that, your argument, and then that's how the evaluators will judge your grant application.
$1 million would be the highest they would go with small
No.
business without 501c.
That's right. The $1 million is for collective. It's not for an individual, one of the only one business organization. But in that particular bucket, let's say like if 100 or
What's the maximum of each individual?
there is no limit for there is no set a minimum and maximum set in that criteria. It's
You give me to understand, you say I can't go for the million,
you
I really appreciate it, but we can't answer that. We've tried to be as honest as we can with you about that. So if there, I'm going to take maybe 2 more questions, and then we're going to have to try to move on to the next section, or we won't be able to get through this in an hour, okay?
Is the $1 million based on how many requests you have, and then that's split up between it, based on each?
It will be based on request. It will be based on the scoring of those requests based upon the rubric. Okay. Yes, ma'am?
Okay, at the back of your page here says Part C, expenditures will only be reimbursed for qualifying activities. So does that mean that you have to spend money and submit that, and then you'll be reimbursed? So you don't get, if you apply for $10,000, you don't get $10,000. You have to spend $10,000 and then submit that, and then get approved and then get it?
There is a drawdown mechanism within the grants, as with any grants, and we can talk about that specifically online. But then once the initial drawdown is made, then you would be based on a reimbursement schedule.
Okay, so there's an initial drawdown, and then the rest.
There can be.
Okay,
Okay?
all right, thank you.
I'm sorry, we'll take this one last question over here because we've been missing you. Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Do you have to be in the QCT track to qualify for those funds? Like the business?
You don't necessarily have to be in a QCT tract. For some projects, they're wanting demographic information on the QCT tracts where they would be to show the impacted groups that will be that would be covered. In relation to a small business, what you need to show is the impact to your business, not necessarily that you're in a QCT tract. Okay. Okay. With that, if you're okay with it, what we'd like to do, we had lots of questions about Zoom Grants itself. And what I'd like to do is to turn it over to Denise Teasdale, and she's actually going to show you how to use Zoom Grants. Yes, ma'am.
What is a QCT track?
Let me answer this question. If you look on the applications, there is a list of definitions, but one person asked, what is a QCT tract? It's a qualified census tract as identified by the federal government.
Good evening, everyone. I'm sure I've talked to a lot of you all because you've had some issues and some technical difficulties filling out the application in Zoom Grant. And what I have tried to do is open an application in Zoom Grant to see if I can kind of walk you through how to open up and set up an account in Zoom Grant. Because what you first have to do is create an account. And in order to create an account, in order to do the application, you have to create an account. So in the flyer that you all picked up, and also it's also online, if you click on the link that says here or in Zoom Grants, you can open the link and it will take you to Zoom Grants. And from there, it will ask you to create an account. And even if you already have a Zoom Grant account, if you've applied for other programs, I know I spoke with a young lady today. She applied for funds with the City of Columbia. The link that we are providing for you will automatically pull up your old Zoom Grant account. So what you need to do is create another account because it's attached. Your Zoom Grant account is already attached to a program if you already have a Zoom Grant account. Does that make sense to you all? Okay. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And you want to create that new one because it will give you access to Richland County's programs. So that's where you want to be. So there are a lot of you that already have created Zoom Grant accounts because you applied for funding somewhere else and you try to log in with that same login and just basically go to Zoom Grants. All it's going to pull up is what you've applied for in the past. You have to go to our Zoom Grant through our link. Yes, ma'am. That program, since you applied for that program is no longer available. In order to access funds on this program, you have to create another account. So once you go into Zoom Grants, if you, your first thing is a new Zoom Grants account. So you want to click there. However, you're able to click on the grant application process, and this is the process that Director Despande went over, and it has all the information. It breaks down all the categories, and it will answer any questions for you there. It has the exact same links. And if I were you, I would click on the links. I would start with the links first, because when you're filling out an application, I know there were questions about what expenses can I use or different documentations I need. If you go and read the Treasury first and then do the application, you'll have a better understanding of federal funds. If you've never applied for federal funds, you definitely need to click on all the links first, read all of that, and then come back and create an account. Because if you go in and create an account, the first thing that everybody is saying is, I don't understand it. So if you click on the links, they help you a whole lot. So what you want to do is you're going to create a new Zoom Grant account, because the link that I just brought me to Zoom Grants. So when you log into Zoom Grants, you're going to create an account for Richland County, and it tells you must be logged in to apply. So I am going to create an account, just a generic account, just to show you what you're going to get. So it tells you you have successfully created a new account and logged in. So now, once you log in, all you have to do is scroll down to the programs that are available. Even though it says no additional applications are allowed at this time. And the reason it says that is because so many people are in the system. I was hoping that it wouldn't do that so I could walk you all through it, but it didn't happen. So, but there are 23 questions that are on the application. You must answer all 23 questions. You must answer all 23 questions. There's also, I would like to go into an account, but I can't go to a mock account. Let's see if I can figure out. Yeah, it's not gonna let me open it because, and when you get this, it tells you, please go back and try it again because it's so many people applying right now. And see, it doesn't help me when it doesn't allow me to open up. See if I can refresh and it let me go in. Well, yeah, it won't let me do it. I apologize. I was hoping I would be able to log in, and I can't log into the account because it has, my account, it has everybody's application in it, so I'm not able to do that. No, it's totally different than the Zoom grant. It's totally different. So for the ones that have already went in and attempted to apply, what questions do you have concerning Zoom grants? And I apologize. I was hoping I would be able to create a new account and walk you through the whole thing.
We're unable to submit through Zoom grants. Will there be a backup process where we submit via email or?
No, you got to do it through Zoom grants. And the only reason we want to make it fair. And what happens is when we start doing paper documentation and allow people to bring in their application, it gets really chaotic. Because 9 times out of 10, if you forget something and I don't give it to Grant Thornton, you're mad at me. You're mad at me, and we don't want that to happen. So if you're able to go into Zoom grants, it makes it a fair process. Because in Zoom grants, in order to submit your application, you have to attach all documentation. And it's going to ask you for a balance sheet. I've had a lot of organizations ask me what a balance sheet is. If you have an organization, a balance sheet is your expenditures and your revenue, you know, what you're taking in. Another form that we're asking for is project information. I know a lot of questions today were about the different projects and how I can apply. And again, let me stop. If you are a nonprofit organization and you want to apply for 3 different categories, you have to submit 3 different applications. And what you can do is, where it says project, if your organization is offering affordable housing, name that project affordable housing. If your organization is offering education, name that program education. And then you're going to drop it's going to be the same questions, but the documentation will still look a little bit different. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So when you go in to Zoom grants, make sure, because we have a lot of incomplete applications, and I don't know if it's because you didn't have your documentation ready to submit your application, or if you got kicked out. So if there are questions about incomplete application, now is the time to ask me, so I can try to walk you through what your issue is.
When you're blocked out like that, what's the average time that you stay blocked out? Because with the September 30th deadline, if I'm locked out for 2 days.
What I have been telling everybody that has seemed to work is do it on the weekends or do it at night.
We ain't got that kind of time.
And I know a lot of people think it requires a lot, but I've seen an application, because when you're an organization, some of the documentation you have at arm's reach. I mean, the letter from your Secretary of State proving that you're a nonprofit. We've had organizations only take an hour and a half to complete a full application. Go ahead.
What I would also say is that it does get a little bit busier at this time of the day and some of the other times, but during the day, like during your business day, it's not as busy because many of you, I'm sure with your nonprofits, you have a full-time job during the day, and then you're working on this some other time. I was in it all day today. So during the day, it seems to be fairly available.
I know that, you know, 'cause I'm kicked out, if you don't mind, I want to kind of be ahead of the game, and I know you said letter from the Secretary of State's office already have. Can you name some of the other stuff, the application, maybe requesting of it in the balance sheet? I'm taking notes into if I can get it consistent, so I can be ahead of the game.
Okay, let's see. So your required documentation is a statement of financial position, which is your balance sheet, a statement of activity, a detailed budget. However, depending on your organization size, if you're an IRS form for 990 and your revenue is over 50,000 and above, you need that IRS form 990. So if you don't have if your business doesn't gross the 750 or the 50,000 or more, you don't have to worry about that. But the detailed project budget, we would really, really appreciate you breaking down. I think there was a question from a nonprofit. Someone had said they're about to start a business. They already have a business, but they're about to start a project. We need project detail. That's where you put your project detail budget, and there's other documentation regarding your project. And under that line right there, you can upload up to 5 documents. So the more documents, the better. And in order to submit this application, you have to have all of these documents or it will not let you submit. You also need IRS determination letter, proving that you're a 501c3 if you're a nonprofit, proof of current registration as a charity with the Secretary of State, and your organization's W-9. And those are things that I would hope would be really, really easy. And now I'm looking at the application questions. Some of you are not familiar with some of the questions. They're basic information: your organization service type, process owners, has your organization received funding in the past? And it's about 22, 23 questions. And there are some that there's an answer for yes or no, and then there's some that for a paragraph. So utilize these, the opportunity, and type in as much information. You want to be as transparent as possible because it is federal funds. It will be audited. And one thing I think some questions that I have had, because people are thinking, oh, I'm going to be the grantor. Richland County is the grantor. You're going to be a subrecipient. The organization is going to be a subrecipient. So all the information, the reporting documentation is going to come back to Richland County, and we're going to report on the funds as a whole. However, we require you to keep certain documentation.
Would you ask for anybody that didn't get this, if they would raise their hand?
Did anybody not get the application process that has the link? Just hold your hand up and she'll make sure. We'll make sure you get it.
I have a question.
Okay.
If all the funds are not awarded in particular categories, can we expect a round 2?
That's what she was saying, that she wants all funds expended at a certain time. So if not, we can have a round 2. We don't want you to get the funds and hold them.
I'm meaning like, will the solicitation be put out again if all the funds aren't awarded?
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Okay.
I've got 2 questions. Balance sheet and income statement needs to be year-to-date, last year.
Year-to-date.
Year-to-date.
Yeah.
My second question is, starting the application, it seems to apply to nonprofits, but what about small businesses? If I have to answer each question, do I have to have a special program as a small business in order to get it?
If you're only applying for the small business funds, no, you don't have to have a project. So you're under your project line is going to say small business.
So all the questions that are applicable to a nonprofit in those places, I put in small business.
Yes, ma'am. And if there is one that is applicable to nonprofit and not applicable for you, please put NA, because once you try to submit it, you have to go back and find out why the application won't go through. And it's because you left something blank. Uh-huh,
Back to the attachments,
uh-huh.
if, where it says, the 501c3 documentation and the Secretary of State for a charity, they're both required. So what do the businesses do since they're not gonna have those two documents?
Your small business, you will have a registration or a license for a business. Even if it's your EIN number, that's where you're gonna put that documentation.
So there's two, so what do you, I guess you just put your existence?
Yes, ma'am, and then you definitely need your EIN, yes, ma'am,
Okay.
your business license.
Okay,
Mhm.
thanks.
Also, there is a spot, I think someone had asked about their budgets and document. There is a part where you can put in your whole budget. You can put in all of your expenses. And then there's another line for other. If there's additionals that you want to add, all you have to do is type in what you're adding. So you want to make sure that your budget is as transparent as possible and what you plan to spend your funds on. There's also a table here. And that breaks down also the type of program that you are applying for, and we are asking for your expenses for FY20, FY21, and FY22. So because there are some organizations that receive federal funds in FY20, we need to know that. And there are some that receive some in FY22. Also, please keep in mind, no duplication of funds is required. I mean, we can't do that. You can't do duplication of funds. I know there are some organizations that have gotten the same amount of money for a project, and now they're gonna apply for Richland County. They may have gotten a federal grant from the city for a certain project, say for affordable housing, and now you're coming to Richland County and you're asking for that. We can't do that. That's a duplication of funds.
What's your fiscal year run to?
Our fiscal year is
When you talk
from,
about fiscal year 21, I know everybody's different.
yeah, yeah.
So whatever ours is?
Mhm. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am?
If you're interested in the, home repair for seniors, how would you go about getting the word out for the seniors to find out what organizations will have the funds so they can apply?
The same way that we're advertising, the organizations that are granted funds for home repairs, I'm sure they're gonna do an advertisement as well. Because if they receive, say for instance, 5 million or however million, a couple of 100,000, they're gonna do a solicitation as well. But it's up to them to do the solicitation. It wouldn't come back to us. They would have to do the solicitation. Say for instance, an organization gets $100,000, it's up to them to do a solicitation to the community.
And that's a good example where you can budget for in the grant, so that can be.
It's been pretty much the TV station, radio station.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It's the same way when organizations got money for rental assistance. There were other communities outside of Richland County that received funds for rental assistance, and they did their own publication. So if they receive funds for us for senior home repairs, they'll do their own publication. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So when you say that there can't be any duplication, are you speaking specifically about the American Rescue Plan funds?
Yes, ma'am. If you've already received American Rescue Fund grant from the city for a project for affordable housing, and now you're coming to us and asking for more money for affordable housing for a project that you've already received funds, that is a duplication of funds.
But you can ask for funds from you for something else.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Also, keep in mind, when we're looking for duplication of funds, if you've already submitted those same receipts to the city, you know what I'm saying? So we've had that happen in the past on other grants, where they've gotten funds from another federal agency and they submitted the same receipts, and then that's a duplication of funds.
If you live in the city,
Mm-hmm.
then city, or how do you go about getting some help if you reside in the city?
Two things. The city also received the American Rescue Grant. They received funds as well. However, if an organization is housed in Richland County but offers assistance to the city of Columbia as well, you're going to be able to get funding that way. Because once they do their soliciting, it's going to be open to the public.
So the city has funding right now?
I don't know all about how much they received. I know they did receive funding, but I don't know what they're doing right now. Yes, ma'am?
I live in Augusta, but my property is in Richland County. Once I register with the Secretary of State, I am still eligible to apply for these funds?
Is your property is in Richland County? Are you using the address of your properties? Yes, ma'am. If it's in Richland County, yes, ma'am. But if it's in Augusta, no, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a list of previous agencies that received awards?
From us, we just opened it up, so we haven't awarded anything yet. Yes, ma'am. Is that it?
Will there be a draft grant review process where we can say, I have a draft, I want you to look at it, or no?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
No, ma'am. And I want to try to get out of the way because I want to let Sarah talk to you about the rubric so she can explain how how the scoring is going to take place for your applications. Okay?
And while she says Sarah, it's actually Grant Thornton, and Sarah's just the representative here today with Grant Thornton. There will be a team, so. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Harris. I'm with Grant Thornton. We are a financial advisory firm. I'm a senior consultant with them. So I have worked as a public servant for about 20 years before I went into Grant Thornton. So I have a lot of experience working with grants at the very local level. Recently having worked over at the city of Casey. And so I understand there are a lot of challenges and complexities of understanding how these grant processes work. So just kind of a pro tip is go through the application when you have a chance and you can actually get in and access it. That's going to be kind of like your Bible to see what steps you have to go through to accurately pinpoint what we're needing. So we developed this rubric, and this is the evaluation rubric. You have to excuse me. I have asthma and I'm nervous speaking in front of people. So let me try to slow down a little bit. If I go too fast, just let me know. But our project summary of this, if you go through it, it gives you some key details of the information that is going to be very pertinent to these particular grants. See, federal grant funding is highly complex. If you don't use it the right way, they will resend it. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to stop it at the pass to make sure that you can input all of your information to make sure that you have your best foot forward with this whole process. Does anybody need a rubric that did not get them earlier? So the rubric is designed, I'll go through the project summary. Just like I gave you a little bit of information about myself, I've also worked as a social worker, I've worked in education, I've also worked with the military. All of you have a very unique story about your particular organizations and your businesses. The big part that you want to look at with this federal funding is to ensure that you are telling us your story of how you have been personally, professionally impacted by COVID-19. I'll give a very specific example. You may be an up-and-coming business, but maybe in 2020 you wanted to pilot your business, but you couldn't do that because COVID-19. Explain that to us. Tell us that story. As we go through this rubric, we're going to look at the framework of what you're illustrating to us. That's going to be very important. We need to see a cause and effect.
So essentially, let me see if I have another example. I have an organization that I have worked with at the social work level. It's a hospice home. They were heavily impacted by COVID-19. So they didn't have an operational budget to purchase beds, additional beds for people that were being housed in their nursing home. So COVID-19 impacted those funds. The effect of COVID-19 is that you had more patients inside of nursing homes that were getting sick and heavily impacted. So that's the story that you want to tell, but frame that with your particular organization. So as we go through here, the project summary, you'll see a lot of financial terms in here, a lot of grant terms. The reason why it's framed that way is to ensure that you actually are staying in line with the federal guidance, because it's very tricky. So once you spend that funding, save every receipt. Make sure that anything that you have purchased, just like you, you explained, that you have, X number amount of dollars that has been sitting because you have not been able to sell it during the pandemic. Tell us that story. Look at this rubric and go through here. How has it impacted your business? Well, you haven't been able to, sell all this supply. You've had supply chain shortages, and you've lost this operational funding. That's what you're going to explain in there. So if you are not a nonprofit, you're applying for small business funds, you're going to look at it that way too. Tell us directly how your business has been impacted. I have a young lady that has a hairdresser salon here. She has been very heavily impacted by the pandemic. People were scared to even come in to get their hair done initially at the onset of this pandemic, and she had to lay off a lot of people. So if you're going through that process, be very specific. I think that what is going to help you with the application is to look at those specific questions. So we went through here to really look at things from a very base level. Community is everything. Richland County has done a very excellent job in trying to frame this grant process with the community in mind. So please tell us and share with us your story. That's really going to help this process. So as you go through here, you'll see a lot of grant terminology. You have your project summary, which is 30 points. You'll see QCT added in here quite a bit. This is the qualified census tract. And again, if you are not in that QCT category, what we're trying to see is if you have any impacts from COVID-19. It's been substantial. It can range from anything. I have seen children impacted with food assistance programs. I have seen elderly impacted across the community with home improvement programs. So anything that has impacted your business, your situation, tell us all about it so we can go through that evaluation. So I'm going to scroll down here to our project impact. So the project impact, this is where you tell us very specifically what has COVID done to you, to your community, and to your circle of friends. That is incredibly important for us to see. Be very specific with your examples. I've lost $10,000 because I could not sell this product due to supply chain shortages. Be very specific about those things. Also, if you have spent money, start digging through your files. Look through your bank accounts, look through your bank statements, look through any receipts that you have spent that have been perfectly aligned with this impact. And then describe to us, tell us how that money has directly been impacted. So scroll down from project impact, we have organizational background. So again, this touches on your particular history as an organization, as a nonprofit, as a business owner. At the beginning of COVID-19, when I worked at the city of Casey, it was very heartbreaking. We had a lot of people in the community who were very heavily impacted by either death, or it could be very serious situations. We had a lot of elderly that could not pay their rent. We had a lot of things. It was just wildfire. We could not really understand the full impact of this. The organizational background is really important for us to understand the grant process at your level of how you will manage these funds. The reason why we want to see your history, and now you may be new to the history as well. So if you are new and you're piloting a brand new project, tell us what you would do with that funding to help impact those communities that you serve that have been heavily impacted by COVID-19. I mean, for example, we have a lot of children parents were out of jobs. Children could not go to school, in a normal fashion. So how did your program assist with that? Did you bring meals to them? Did you have Meals on Wheels? Things of that nature. So it's really illustrating a story of your program as you go through this process. So as we go through the budget, your budget is very important. Okay, again, save your receipts. Start digging through all of those bank files, everything that substantiates what you are trying to request. If you spent $5,000 on brown bag lunches to support, a community effort, or if your business provided $300 for T-shirts, things of that nature to try to help kids in an after-school program, you want to really illustrate those points. What we're looking for is not just the financial impact, but we're looking at future sustainability for the programs. So if you have a strong program or you have a really great idea, I have seen some innovation in areas that are amazing with this grant opportunity. So this is really the first time in history that we've seen the federal government allocate this much funding. It is pretty astronomical. And with this, it comes a lot of responsibility. How you spend this money, impacting with COVID-19, always think cause and effect. COVID-19, I lost I'm so sorry. I lost someone that I love due to COVID-19. What impacts did I have from that? What organization did I reach out to, a nonprofit, that would help me with that? As a social worker, that is very important. So as you're applying for these programs, your organization and your small business, those are the heavily impacted areas of COVID-19. And what we're trying to do is get this money directly into the hands of the community. And so use this as your guidance. Now, when you get to the finance area, you start having questions. I am going to give you my personal number. And you can call me if you have questions as well. And I think this is just going to help the overall process because the U.S. Treasury guidelines are very intensive. So it's not always possible to know exactly which funds are going to be expended and what qualifying or disqualifying items are out there. But the telephone number that you can reach me at is 803-231-3093. And again, I'm so sorry if I'm rushing through this because I'm a little bit nervous, but this is actually a really awesome opportunity for all of you to get into this grant application, to look through it and look at it line by line. Don't let it intimidate you as you go through it. The first step is really just filling out that application. If you don't have all your materials ready to go and handy, it has a save function, so all that information is still saved in that repository. So keep at it, and think about what you want to tell us. Think about what you want to share with us, and really think about the relationship between COVID-19 and how that has directly impacted your organization or your future business or any other area that has really devastated you. I've heard a lot of different stories, but this is a really good time. So what Grant Thornton will do, obviously we're a financial advisory firm. We go in here, we have experts from all industries across grants administration. So we analyze local, state, federal funding, and all U.S. Treasury guidelines. So make sure you are specific, detailed, and keep trying at it. So this important is very processed, and I am really looking forward to actually seeing all of your applications and hearing your stories. So thank you so much for having me tonight. Yes, ma'am. Okay, she asked for my name, and let me give you my telephone number again. My name is Sarah Harris. I'm with Grant Thornton. The telephone number is 803-231-3093. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Just to be clear, we can budget for funds that we've already spent during the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yes, so ARPA funding, the reason why we ask for records from FY20, FY21 is essentially your way of substantiating that you have had loss because of the pandemic. Often that's a little bit easier for financial reviewers to go in there, but be very specific about it. Document have all your documents ready to go, and in those narratives, describe how that information was impacted as far as your bank statements or what you lost in that process. Our reviewers will go through that and determine the eligibility criteria at the federal level, and it's more of high-level review. And then, you just got to make sure you get that application in within that 30-day period. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here, and I really look forward to seeing all of your applications. Okay.
Sarah, thank you. So as we wrap up here this evening, I want to just take a few moments. We happen to have one of the members of County Council here, so I'm going to allow her to come and just speak to you for a few moments. But I think that's important because these funds are here before us today as a result of really two actions. Certainly, the U.S. Treasury making these funds available, but also specifically County Council saying, we recognize the need for these funds to go to the community, and we want to provide these funds and make them available for nonprofit organizations who are impacted and who are serving, as well as small businesses who may have been negatively impacted by the COVID-19. So with that being said, I'm going to actually ask for your indulgence for just one moment. I'm going to bring up Council Member Ms. Yvonne McBride, and she's going to close out the meeting on this evening. Ms. McBride?
Thank you. I promise not to be no longer than a minute at the most. First of all, it's just beautiful seeing so many people here. And this was the purpose of allocating this money that would go directly to the communities. Many counties have received funds, but they didn't put the amount of money that Richland County has for the community, because you know your problems, you know our problems better than anybody else. And so we trust that you would be the right person to implement these programs, and that these programs will change the quality of life of many of our citizens. I want to, and one more thing I want to ask you to please be patient with staff, because they're here to help you, and I'm going to ask staff to be patient with you so that we can all work together to get this done. And I thank Mr. Brown and his administration for the work that they're doing. You got the numbers to call people if you have questions, and I wish you all much success. Thank you.
So that does conclude our meeting. If you want to come out and get more additional information or didn't get everything in tonight, you came in a little bit later, we will be doing this again tomorrow morning, same facility at 10 o'clock a.m. Thank you.